Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. On today's episode, I'm going to interview the lead singer and guitarist from one of my favorite all-time bands, Swervedriver. Swervedriver is a band from the UK that released their first album, Raise, in 1991, and a series of albums through the 90s and up to the present day. The reason that I love Swervedriver is that they are a shoegazer band, a psychedelic band, a rock band, and Adam comes up with the most creative lyrics and guitar parts, the most beautiful sounding chord progressions, and he's one of my favorite guitar players. If you saw it go, you're not alone. Hearing unseen sounds from the depths below, and you settle In this interview, I ask him about all different things, alternate tunings they use. He's going to show a couple of different songs, how to play them. And I've been trying to get him on my channel since really the beginning, since 2017. I emailed him many times. The last time was in 2018, and he finally responded like 2 months ago. So please enjoy this interview with Adam Franklin from Swervedriver. Adam, welcome.
Hi, Rick.
Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to have you.
Likewise, man. Yeah. Finally, we've set this up.
The story about how I got turned on to your band. So I was at this listening station in San Francisco in 1993. I see Mescal Hat. I said, what is this? It has such an interesting cover. I put on headphones. I start listening. And I was like, okay, this sounds really interesting. Forsaking Heat was the first song, then Duel. Mm. By the time it just, honestly, by the entrance, the first opening chords, guitar riff of Duel, I said, oh, this is amazing. What is this? Mm. And then I heard Blowin' Cool next, and I said, oh, this is unbelievable. I buy the record, and then I listen to it every day, till today, actually, I still listen to it. But then I bought Raise. I mean, immediately within a day, I bought Raise, and I listened to those two records constantly. And what you do with your guitar parts, with your vocals, the chords you choose, the notes that you choose, the sounds that you choose, everything appeals to my ears. And frankly, every musician that I know loves Swervedriver. Now, Swervedriver was always you realize this, right? That musicians love Swervedriver?
Well, yeah, I guess it's kind of like the word that we're kind of the musicians or something, or the band's band, you know. A lot of bands kind of seem to like our band, you know.
I asked Adam about Swervedriver's first record, Raise, being released 1 week before Nirvana Nevermind, Soundgarden Bad Motorfinger, and Red Hot Chili Peppers Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic.
I do remember the fact that Nirvana's album came out a week before ours, and in the UK, Nirvana's album kind of entered the charts in the lower reaches or something, you know, and then dropped out because I guess they hadn't pressed up enough copies, you know. So then our album slotted in the next week and was above Nirvana's album, but then our album went down, and then theirs got repressed massively because they took off a little bit, didn't they?
What was it like to actually have a record out during that time period, though? That was an insane time period.
It was insane. It's like you say about the two different sort of sides of... sorry, it's going to be this mic closer. The two different sides of what we were doing, you know, because obviously in the UK, there's quite a different perception, really, I suppose, because in the UK, we were on Creation Records alongside a lot of bands who then a little bit later became, you know, associated with shoegazing and stuff like My Bloody Valentine and Ride and Slow Dive and all that. But at the same time, we were picked up by A&M in the States. Julie Panibianco signed us to A&M at some point in 1990. And obviously Soundgarden were on A&M, so we ended up doing a tour with them and tours with like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff. So it was a different kind of perception, I think. I think the UK audience and the US audience probably had a slightly different idea of what Swervedriver was about. But really, all it's about is just listening to the music. And of course, there are influences from all over the place, really. We were we were called Shake Appeal, and this was the band that mutated into Swervedriver, which was very much kind of Iggy and the Stooges kind of influence, New York Dolls, MC5, that kind of thing. But also there was this thing going on in the UK at the time with bands like Spaceman 3 and My Bit of Valentine and G's and Mary Jane and Cocteau Twins, things like that. And there was something happening there guitar-wise that was quite interesting, It was very much a sort of experimental but kind of pop at the same time, and people putting out songs with melodies, 3-minute songs, but kind of experimental on the guitar side of things. And then you had the thing happening in the States as well, because as you say, we was like a rock band as well.
You guys also toured with bands back then. Did you guys tour with Smashing Pumpkins? And did you ever tour with Soundgarden?
Yeah, we toured with Soundgarden in, I guess, 91, because they were label mates. So we did a whole tour of the US, and I guess the album you just mentioned was blowing up as well, So they were booked into kind of like theatre venues, which were just rammed, and it was just sold out shows. And then we heard later on, for a lot of people, that's when they first heard us, like, who the hell's this band? Which is quite exciting, I guess, if you go to see a band and then the opening band comes on, you're like, wow, this is really good as well, 2 years later, 93, on the Mescalhead touring time, we toured with Smashing Pumpkins. I guess Billy Corgan was a fan, and we joined them in New Orleans and walked in the venue and walked across. They were sound checking. He was on stage with the guitar, and he kind of went, "Hey!" We were like, "Hey!" And he started playing the intro to Duel, You've been away for so long, you can't ask why. But he was playing it in a standard tuning, so he was going, and he was like, "Is that right? Is that right?" And I was like, "I'll have to teach you the recording. The tuning a little bit later."
What tuning is it in, actually?
It's a FCD GCD. Bottomley goes up to an F, the A up to a C, the D and the G say the same, the B up to and then the D, top E down 2 steps. We basically had a tuning which was GA, the GCD, GCD, that was the tuning that we started using around that time, and that's what Blowing Cool is as well. But I guess with Duel, it was kind of like we needed to get an F in there for some reason, so it was kind of like, didn't make sense, so I just tuned down the bottom string, But I think that's a great way to mess around with tunings, People sort of say, how do you experiment? And I always say, you just find a nice chord maybe, or whatever, tune everything to that, And then if you can't reach a string, you just kind of maybe tune it down a step and then work around that. But the great thing about alternate tunings is you don't really know where you're going,
Well, I was really surprised when I first saw you play back then in 93 about how intricate. Well, I knew how intricate the parts were, but how you would sing and play these really complex parts. It's like you actually played the more complicated parts than Jimmy, it seemed like, while you were singing.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I think you have to sort of like switch your brain off or something, You kind of just get used to, you just think, okay, my fingers are going to do that, and I've got to try and hit these notes here while I'm singing, Son of Mustang Ford is kind of complex, I suppose, because it's on the guitar.
So where did you come up with all these kind of voicings? I mean, you hear a lot of really use a lot of suspended chords, you use a lot of modulations to dissonant keys, like I Am Superman from Ejector Seat Reservation.
I'm not really sure where that song came from, but I mean, Jez, the drummer, was very much into Keith Moon, so it's got a kind of like a Who-ish kind of thing going on. We recorded that at the Kink studio in Crouch End in London, and I doubled up the bass line on the piano, and then incredibly broke a bass string on Ray Davies' grand piano, and you can hear it. I'll have to find out exactly where it is, but at the beginning of the song, I think it's just before the vocal, you hear a kind of, and that's the string breaking, and then we couldn't, we'd done a demo of it with that guitar going wah 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 wah, and we couldn't recreate that sound. So it was another case of being in the studio with Alan Moulder, and we were trying to get this sound, and he said, and we were like, it's just not happening. He said, you know what we can do? We can probably get the original guitar from the demo, and I can assign it to keys on this keyboard and this sampler, and we can play it that way. And it's kind of like, that sounds exciting. So he did that. So he got the on the bottom C or something, and then on the D. And I was like, okay, it's good to go. And I just stood there and I just pressed down and played those lines like it was a keyboard,
So, because this is pre-Pro Tools, so you couldn't just put it in and move it around.
Well, that's right. I mean, actually, on that album, there's a track that didn't make the album called Neon Lights Glow, which has sort of appeared. It did appear on a reissue of Ejector Seat Reservation, but it was like a 12-minute long track. It had strings on it. It was based on the Kraftwerk song, so the strings were playing a kind of staccato. And again, we were trying to mix in sounds from the demo. So Alan again said, there is one thing we can do. We can rent in this thing. It's called Pro Tools. And we're like, what's Pro Tools? And it cost a lot of money just to rent it in. I mean, Alan didn't have it. The studio we were in didn't have it, And so that technically was the most expensive track that Swervedriver ever recorded. And it never got released anyway. Because it was like, the amount of tape being used, the Pro Tools, paying the string players. And then it didn't get released anyway. So what are you going to do?
So Jez, what I loved about his drumming is the Keith Moon style. A lot of the fast tunes that you would do, like Planes Over the Skyline, for example, which I guess was a B-side from Mescalhead, right? Which is one of my favorite tunes. But I love...
Yeah, it's a good tune.
I love all the drumming on it, the high-energy Keith Moon style drumming. I always would call it just clouds of melody, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying about dissonance as well. It's like you can have, the dissonance, which is kind of like the classic sort of thing. If you're playing a G chord and you've got like a... So that's like... But then you put it into B and suddenly it's like... Which is a very sort of Sonic Youth kind of thing. But I think it was that thing. We always were interested in melody, but we were also interested in, the dissonance and guitar experimentation. And there were a lot of things kind of like, we were really into John Fahey, who's a kind of, acoustic guitar player who had Tacoma Records from Washington, I think he was originally from. And a friend of ours had just turned us on to him and his alternate tunings. And that was an interesting thing. We were kind of learning tunes like On the Sunny Side of the Ocean and thinking this is really cool. And then at the same time, discovering Sonic Youth and that they were also playing around with tunings. But at the time, we didn't make a connection that they might be fans of John Fahey. Of course, over time, it turns out that they were also, but also a kind of like, a buzzy kind of punk pop thing. Bands like the Buzzcocks or like T-Rex. There was always like a pop element to us because that was the stuff that we grew up on, kind of in the early 70s. Me and Jimmy weren't living anywhere near each other back then, didn't know each other, but he was buying Slade singles and The Sweet and T-Rex, and I guess all that kind of all that kind of merged. In the 80s we got into the whole, like say, the Stooges and the MC5, but then discovered Husker Du, and that kind of and those bands seemed more, it seemed like there was something happening, really. It was like a real kind of like something bubbling under on both sides of the Atlantic, really. Like I say, Spacemen 3 on one side, Sonic Youth over there, and then that kind of developed into the thing that's known as shoegazing. I mean, initially there was a lot of really exciting records coming out, and then My Blade of Valentine, of course, put out incredible records as well.
Okay, so how did you make your connection with Alan Moulder originally? So Alan, for those of you that don't know him, I mean, most of the people that follow my channel, well, some of the people would know who Alan Moulder is, famous producer, engineer, mixer. They should know who he is. How did you initially get connected with Alan?
I got connected with Alan at the bar in a club in London, ULU, the University of London Union. And I was stood at the bar waiting to get served. It was between bands, so everybody's crammed in around the bar. And then the guy in the corner says, "Oh, aren't you the guy from Swervedriver?" I was like, "Yeah, who are you?" And he said, "I'm Alan Moulder. I produce records." I'm like, "Bloody hell, you're Alan Moulder." I said, "Do you want to produce our next one?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And that was it, really. I mean, literally.
Is that actually true?
That is true, yeah. Entirely true, yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, we were looking to find somebody. We hadn't been that happy with our initial recordings for various reasons, even though some of those tracks sound amazing. But yeah, somehow Alan just had, he just has this thing where it's all about kind of separating the frequencies. I think we would go into the live room and put down 4 or 5 guitars or something, and then emerge, and it's just all these guitars, and he'd say, "All right, let's go to the pub for 10 minutes or go and get a bag of chips or something and see how it sounds when you come back." And I guess in the time we were gone, he'd get that first Jimmy's kind of like heavy, fuzzy rhythm or whatever, and then, EQ it a certain way, and then, oops. And then he'd get, my guitar to set over the top or whatever, and suddenly it would all sit in place, and it was like, oh, wow, that's amazing.
So getting back to Mescalhead, what other songs are alternate tunings on there? If Duel is, Blowin' Cool is, are there any other Duress, Girl on a Motorbike? Which ones?
Both of those, yeah. It would be Girl on a Motorbike. We're both playing the GCD. You find it everywhere. The last track, I'm playing FCD GCD, is the same as Duel. That's the only other song where it's the FCD version.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
And then Duress was composed as a GCD song, I guess the rhythm chords. So Jimmy plays the rhythm chords, and then I played the lead part, and I wanted to get something, I don't know, I read in a guitar magazine an interview with Thurston Moore, and he mentioned the sound of an Aeolian harp and how the notes go up sort of gradually, like or something, I thought that'd be interesting. Maybe I'll just try and tune my guitar somehow. So I tuned my guitar, and that is G, A, B, and then A, B, C sharp. So it kind of doesn't make sense, but when you play, it's just like this nice, and then I was able to then there's the wah-wah part, and I was able to sort of bar across them. So I'm basically playing 2 octaves on 4 strings, and then the wah-wah and the volume pedal, and it just had this, this massive sort of sound. I guess that's it for the alternate tunings on that album, although there were other songs from that album, like which were B-sides later. Cars Converge on Paris is also GCD. I think Year of the Girl is as well.
Well, I love that you've continued to make music, Adam. Beyond your records with Swervedriver, your solo records are amazing. I mean, I really
thank you.
I mean, everything that you've done, I've followed, and wow. I think that your sense of melody, your sense of harmony, your taste, your lyrics, everything. You just have an aesthetic that really speaks to me. And honestly, all my musician friends, like all the different projects that you've done. And
that's amazing, yeah.
It's so cool that this aesthetic that you have that connects to people, and that I think that has been consistent too from the beginnings for the past.
It's true, yeah. I mean, because I think a lot of bands, they put out their first records and they're a different band, and then they don't find their way until a couple of records in or something, and then people hear the early stuff. Oh, that's weird. It doesn't sound like them at all. Whereas I think, this sort of Swervedriver aesthetic came across right from the off. People in England dug the fact that, because I mean, the early songs, it's all about driving cars across the desert and stuff, something that you're never going to do in England, It was just a sort of escapism, really, But people really latched onto it from the off, and many people have mentioned the artwork being part of the whole sort of package. And, with hindsight, you can look back and think, well, it's quite cool that we actually did make that connection straight from the off. And I think we found a way to actually have some sort of, there are quite complex musical ideas in some of those songs, but it's kind of tossed out like a Swervedriver thing, like you're chucking a big sort of dinosaur bone out. Here's a new tune.
I played the song Setting Sun earlier in the video, and Adam sent me a tutorial for that. Check out the beautiful chord changes between the two parts. Well, Adam, you always have a home on my channel. You can come on and do a concert whenever you want. I'll come over to England, and we can set up, and we'll make a video and stuff. You play whatever you want.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, until today, I was a Zoom virgin.
And now here I am. I'm doing Zoom. I'm so 2020. I'm actually doing a Zoom.
Yeah, I've done
I
a Zoom.
didn't go for the background.
I've done a Zoom so many times, and I still couldn't get on this today. It's like you're like, I'm on. I was like, I'm on too. I don't know where it is. I still haven't been able to figure this out. So
yeah.
Technology, it's overrated.
It is, but I really appreciate this. This is amazing. It's an honor to have you on, and
likewise. Really.
So
it's great. It's great. We finally made this connection. I've been watching a few, and I've had a few friends kind of saying, "Man, you got to check out," And you see comments underneath things on YouTube like Rick Beato took me here, and I'm like, "Who the hell's Rick Beato?"
I should get a T-shirt. Who the hell is Rick Beato?
But then finally, I was like, it was only like a couple of weeks ago, and Sandy, my neighbour across the road, he was out walking his dog, and I said, "Hey, how's things going?" He said, "No, I'm quite busy actually. I'm doing a lot of stuff, despite it being a lockdown and everything." He said, "I'm getting back into playing the guitar." I said, "There's this guy on YouTube, has a YouTube channel." I was like, "Well, what's his name?" This guy called Rick Beato. I was like, "You're not going to believe this. Rick did this thing about his favourite band you've never heard of." Sandy was quite impressed. Sandy will be, quite thrilled to see this.
Adam, I don't talk about. I mean, there's very few bands that I'm such a huge fan of, and like I said, I've wanted to have you on this since the beginning of my channel. I was like, I want to have Adam Franklin on, interview him, and I'm glad it worked out now. Actually, this is actually even better that it happened now. But
this was the perfect time as well. I mean, I guess the last couple of years, we did quite a bit of touring, and quite often you don't really have much to say. It's like you don't listen to your own music, so you haven't, you don't really know what to say. But recently, I have been listening because we put out a couple of things on Bandcamp, sort of remasters and reissues and things. And I kind of listen to those and just to make sure that they've been mastered well and stuff, and then kind of getting into it. I'm like, well, this is actually pretty good. I mean, it's good when that happens, because you don't sit around listening to what you've done, and you want to be working on something new. But sometimes you might be in a bar or something, and something comes on. This sounds pretty good. Everyone's like, "Oh, does it? Who do you think it is?" It's like, "Oh shit, is this us?" It doesn't happen that often. I mean, one of the things is on Match of the Day, the TV show in England on a Saturday night, which has all the soccer matches. And we got on there. I think Sci-Fly was on there once with like Goal of the Month or something, and that's one of those moments you're like, "Wow, we're on Goal of the Month. This is amazing."
That's awesome. Well, like I said, Adam, anytime you want to, debut anything, whatever, you just let me know, and you're more than welcome to come on, talk about whatever projects you have.
Yeah, that could be something.
Adam, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Rick.
And we'll talk.
Much appreciated.
All right, man. I'll see you. That's all for now. Don't forget to subscribe. If you're a first-time viewer, ring the bell. That'll let you know when I go live and when a new video comes out. Give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment. That's very important. If you're interested in the Beato book, go to my website at www.rickbeato.com. Follow me on Instagram at rickbeato1. Check out the new Beato ear training program at beatoeartraining.com. And if you want to support the channel even more, think about becoming a member of the Beato Club. Thanks for watching.